right, Sports Talking Nation, welcome back once again. It's your host, the G-Man, as we continue our position-by-position 2016 NFL preview. Today we're going to speak about outside linebackers. Now, that's a real diverse position because in a 3-4, the outside linebacker actually provides your pass rush. In a 4-3, they're going to be your tacklers, going to be your guys who cover the tight end and the backs out of the backfield. So it's a wide, diverse field. You have to be able to do a lot of different things. Some guys specialize at one, some guys specialize at the other, and the best of them can do both. And there are some guys at the top of this list that can do both. I don't think this is a great outside linebacker draft. I think it's a good outside linebacker draft. It's probably a B outside linebacker draft. I think the draft overall this year is actually pretty damn good. There's not a lot of elite talent at the sexy positions, but I think there's a lot of talent to be had for teams. And outside linebacker is no different. I think there are a few at the top that can be really, really good at what they do. And let's get into that right now. So we'll start off with Myles Jack from UCLA. Now, he is not an unknown commodity, but he's also not a commodity that comes without risk. He is an elite talent. And I don't just mean from an athleticism standpoint. And he played running back. And when I say played running back, I don't mean he sporadically got 4 carries a game as a freshman. He played both ways. He was an absolute stud. He is fast. He is strong. He is smart. Everything they needed him to do, he did. Showed his versatility, showed his strength, and his quickness. He had a terrible, terrible injury to the knee. He also has had previous injuries in the past, so that's a big medical red flag. And the latest news out is that there are concerns about his long-term health, that the knee's not healing the way they think. Can he come back and be the player he was? Can he not? Or can he come back? Number one, probably. Everybody comes back from the injuries now. Modern medicine is so fantastic. But can he come back and be the player that he was? Well, that's a little different. How do we know if that's going to be able to happen? We just don't know. But I'll tell you what, a guy with his talent, I think he's worth the risk. As soon as I look at him and I see his elite skill set, the first guy I think of is Thomas Davis. If you don't know Thomas Davis from Carolina, he has had 3 knee injuries, 1 knee 3 times. And he's continued to come back. He is so fast and strong. He's the heart of that defense. I think that's what Jack can become. Now, as a guy who has personally blown out both of his Achilles heels, because that is where my weakness is, playing basketball both times, your body does have weak spots. And if his knee is the weak spot, it's going to be tough to overcome long term. But I'm rooting for him, and I think his superstar potential still actually warrants him a position in the top 10 despite that injury risk. I think he's a hell of a player. So that's what I think of Myles Jack. Number 2 on my list is Scooby Wright. Scooby Wright is like the forgotten man. Scooby Wright had huge hype coming into the year, had a bad injury that missed a lot of time, and after he came back, he was rusty. That doesn't change the fact that he is fast, smart, and aggressive as a player, and that the year before he was an absolute animal. He can get after the passer. He can play the run. He is not huge to be an edge rusher, but he's probably 240 pounds. He's fast. I think he's got the entire skill set. I love his chances to be a star. He honestly really reminds me of Teddy Bruschi when he was in college. Even a little faster than Teddy Bruschi, but for a modern-day comparison, how about Levante David? And if you guys don't know who Levante David is, well, you're not watching football very much, because he is on highlights all the time with his speed and his ball-hawking ability. I think Scooby Wright has that kind of ability. He's my sleeper to rise up and be better than people think. Third on my list is Noah Spence. He's a pass rusher. He is not going to be your classic 4-3 outside linebacker or even a strong side linebacker. He's going to get after the passer, and he can do it really, really well. Did it at Ohio State before he went to Eastern Kentucky. Now, the fact that he played at Eastern Kentucky shows what the challenges are. He has a ton of personal problems. He has a ton of challenges and issues with drugs, with alcohol, with robbery, things you really have to be concerned with. The difference is Spence stood up, manned up, said he knew he had problems, said he learned from them, and he's grown. There's no reason to be worried about him because he's a different player than now. Now, that's easy to say and hard to do, but I got to tell you, he comes across as very sincere and a reasonable, nice young guy who just made some dumb mistakes. I think he's got his act under control. I think he can be like a Bruce Irvin, who is a pass rush force off the end when they actually let him play in Seattle. Fast, again, he had some personal problems as well. He's got a little more attitude than Spence does. Spence is more of a calm, good guy, but the talent level is there. I think Noah Spence has a chance to be a good player for someone willing to take the risk for him. Su'a Cravens is my number 4 outside linebacker, and he is awful small. There's a trend of big DBs moving into the box in the NFL right now, and that bodes well for Su'a Cravens. He has speed, talent. He plays like a lunatic. He does get dinged from time to time, but he has speed to make him valuable, and he does hit when he gets there. I think he could play safety in the right scheme. I know this is high praise, and you hate to throw this on a young kid, but he reminds me of Polamalu and how he goes after the ball and how he flows to the ball. Now, the difference is Cravens is more of a traditional linebacker. You put him on the weak side linebacker and you keep blockers off of him, I think he can make a big difference for you. But I'm just saying he does have the quickness to play multiple positions. A modern-day comparison is like a Dion Buchanan, who, again, at 210 pounds, stepped up from D-back in college to linebacker in the pros and led their team in tackles, I believe, in Arizona, and was a real force for them. And I think Cravens has that same ability. Number 5 on my top 5 list is Darren Lee from Ohio State. It's hard to use steady and athletic in the same sentence, but that is what he is. He is super athletic, and he doesn't make mistakes. He makes a smart play, and he goes and gets the ball. I don't think he was used properly as a pass rusher in college because that's not the Ohio State scheme, but I think he can do it. If a team desired, I think he could be an edge rusher and then transition to play the run in a 4-3. I really like him as a player. I think he's got a chance to do a lot. I think like a DeAndre Levy, who people don't know as much about because he played for the Lions, is a real good comparison. Able to do everything, big, strong, fast. Kind of the prototype of what you need at linebacker. You need such a varied skill set. There's a lot you need to do. The next 5 in order, Jalen Smith. If this guy hadn't torn up his knee and ankle and basically his whole leg late in the season, he'd be the number 1 overall and probably a top 10 pick. But it's a real bad injury, and there's a lot of concerns about him. From Notre Dame, he comes back, he's going to be a good player. Leonard Floyd from Georgia, he's a little bigger than some of the other outside linebackers, but I think he can play a traditional 4-3 Sam. I like him a lot. Georgia has a habit of producing those kind of linebackers. Josh Perry, the other linebacker from Ohio State, another guy with supreme athleticism. Hard to tell what he can and can't do because in their scheme, linebackers are a little bit limited, and he had a lot of superior talent around him. But I do think he's a decent player. Jordan Jenkins from Georgia, again, prototype Georgia linebacker. Big, won't just tackle you, but he's a hitter. He likes to hit, and he can range side to sideline and shed blocks, so I think he's got a chance to be good. Eric Stryker is a guy that other people like a lot more than me. I do like him as a player, but he's smaller. He was a pass rusher, but he's not big enough to be a pass rusher. I mean, he's going to have to be elite speed-wise to get after the passer, like an Elvis Dumervil was in his prime, and that's hard to put on a guy because he's really kind of small. I think he can cover running backs if they decide to put him in that position, but right now he's best with his hand in the ground going forward to get the passer. I do think he'll help you out. So overall, pretty good class. A lot of decent players out there to be had, and you'd be lucky to get one of these because anyone who create pressure off the edge really makes your team different. So with your 2016 position-by-position review of your outside linebackers, I'm your host, the G-Man, and I am out.